So
do you hear me?
we're going to start with Mike Welsch now. Yes, Mike, we can hear you. Sorry, I didn't realize that was you. I was kind of scanning, trying to figure out if you were on. But
Well,
I know
I did the cell phone thing so I could follow the post position draw on my computer, and I'm technically challenged anyway, so it's a miracle that I got on here, to be honest with you.
Well, apparently I am too. So because I didn't realize that was you. But anyways, we have you now, Mike, and we won't keep you long. But obviously, I know you've been following what's been going on with the draw. We've been talking about it earlier with Gabby. She's kind of been following a little bit. We talked about a couple of the horses, and I'm going to kind of put this into your, I'm going to throw this into your court so you can kind of lead us a little bit because you've been following what's happening. What has been some of the most, I guess maybe, I don't want to say eye-opening events so far, like through the draw? Anything that you've said, oh wow, that's a great post position for that horse, or ooh, that's bad for that particular horse?
Well, they just finished drawing the Classic about 3 minutes ago, and Nick's Go, who's going to be the speed, and I guess the favorite, is right in the middle in post position 5, but a couple of the speed horses that he's got to worry about drew outside him, Medina Spirit and Max Player. So they're probably going to, have to leave from out there, and it could lead to a contested pace scenario. I think the pace scenario in here is going to go a long way to deciding the outcome. And, the one question mark with Nick's Go is 1.25 miles. He's never been 1.25 miles before. And, if he gets some significant pace pressure, it could make the task a little more difficult for him. But the main track at Delmar, especially at this distance, it does play to speed from the small sample they've had. I think they've had 9, I read 9 1.25 races at Del Mar. 5 have won by the horse in front at the top of the stretch, 1 by the horse that was second, and the other 3 by the horse that was third. So you really need to be close up, turning for home. And so the pace scenario could be a big factor here. Now, it's also interesting, Essential Quality and Hot Rod Charlie drew right next to each other. Hot Rod Charlie's in 3, Essential Quality's in 4. And, the two of them ideally would be able to work out a stalking trip behind the, potentially 3 speed horses up front of them. So, in the end, it's up to the riders, and the break is going to be significant. So, from the post position draw, that's the way it pans out. And, you sit down, you try to handicap and figure out how the trips go, and the gate opens and 1/8 of a mile into the race. It's never really what you expect is going to happen. But we'll see. We'll see if Nick Scoot can get loose on the lead. And if he does, he's going to be difficult to beat. If he gets pressed a little bit, then the race becomes a lot more wide open.
Now, Mike, have you seen, I'm assuming you've seen some of these horses, or maybe a couple of these horses' final works, or maybe not even necessarily their last work, maybe their previous work. Because I know you were in Saratoga all summer, and then after that, did you see any of these horses working? And what are your impressions because you're in California now, are you not?
I've been at Del Mar since last Thursday, and we had about 35 to 40 works here over the weekend. Obviously, there's 180 or 90 horses in this year's Breeders' Cup, and they've had their last work spread out all over the country. But we did have a fairly significant amount here this weekend. I got to see Art Collector, who, I really like. I like the way he's looked since I've been here, since I've seen him. Even before he worked, I just thought he's made a really good appearance. Obviously, he's in terrific form right now. He's won all 3 starts since joining Bill Mott's barn. He won the Grade 1 Woodward. He beat Maxfield and Dr. Post. This competition is going to be significantly more difficult, I think, but he certainly couldn't be coming into the race doing any better. And his last work, while it, was pretty much a maintenance work for Bill Mott, he did his more serious work up at Saratoga before he shipped here. And he shipped in, the Bill Mott horse who shipped in here last Monday or Tuesday. I heard what Gabby was saying about either you ship in way in advance or you ship in right on top. Bill was a little bit more in the middle. He came in here early this week, as opposed to, like Gabby said, Steve Asmussen's been in California for about a month now. And the Todd Pletcher horses, the Chad Brown horses, the Brad Cox horses, they're all coming in within less than a week of the race, having had their major works back home. But I just like the way our collectors look. All four Bill Mott's horses have trained well since I've been here. So I think he's a bit of a sleeper in here. The question is, where's he going to be when they get into that first turn? Because he likes to be up close too. He's been in front in 2 of his 3 wins this season with Bill, and he was sitting second in the third. So he drew post 6, so he's kind of out a little bit in no man's land. He's got to avoid being hung wide and pushed back to, near the rear of the pack. I think that would be a death knell for him if he gets shuffled back early and trapped wide. So I think Bill would have rather had it maybe more of an inside post for him, because he's speed, but he's not the speed of a Knicks Go or Medina Spirit. So, but he's a horse that's doing well. Essential Quality, I've seen his last couple of works on tape. I've seen a lot of his works, and he seems to be working better now from the last couple of works I've seen on tape at Churchill than earlier in the year. And it's not to say he did not work well earlier in the year. This horse always works well. He seems to just do enough. He gets to the wire on the gallop outs. Earlier this year, leading into the Derby, leading into the Travers, he was sometimes second best to his inferior workmates on the gallop outs. And I generally don't like to see that. But once you see that on a regular basis and then they perform like he's performed, you make less of a case about it. Well, in his last couple of works leading into this race, 2 works back, he beat his workmate. And in his most recent work, he beat his workmate significantly and really galloped out strong. I think it was the best work I'd seen from him. So that being said, you put that all together, what does that mean? It seems to indicate that he's coming in sitting on his potentially best race.
Okay, great. If anybody has a question for Mike, please just let us know so we can, as we go, before we move on to another race. And if you have a particular race you want to ask Mike about, also, let us know. Again, Mike, we know you haven't had necessarily a chance to crunch all the numbers. You literally just kind of, I think, put everything out for the post positions just because they just drew. But if we have any questions, maybe people will ask you if you happen to know.
Okay, yeah, I just want to continue as far as the class. I did see Hot Rod Charlie's work last week and here over the weekend, and he was very, very good. Gabby was 100% correct in her assessment. He finished strong. He galloped out really well. I think he's, carrying his form, into this race. You sometimes would tend to worry. A horse ran his career top buyer in his most recent start. You sometimes get the feeling that he might regress off it. He doesn't give that impression from his work the other day. So that's a good sign for trainer Doug O'Neill. And Max Player, I've seen a couple of his works on tape. He's been working with Clariere over at Santa Anita, and Clariere has beaten him both times, been the better horse both times, significantly in the last time they worked together. Now, I don't know if that necessarily means Clariere is doing unbelievably good or Max Player is regressing a little bit or maybe a little bit in between, but I think it's significant enough for me to, give Clariere a second and third look in the distaff and maybe downgrade Max Player just a tad, even though his recent form is terrific. He's won his last 2. He won the Jockey Club by 4 lengths, but the field he beat there is no match for what he's going to be facing here on Saturday.
Okay. Actually, Gabby was talking a little bit about Clariere as well earlier. She liked her a little bit. She was talking about that as well. Mike, you didn't really talk about Medina Spirit, not directly. We were talking about him earlier, with Gabby, and she was kind of lukewarm. What are your thoughts on Medina Spirit? Yes, no, or we just kind of move?
I'm kind of in the no camp. I just think that he's won his last 2, but didn't beat a lot in those 2 races. His game is to be on the lead. His best game is to be on the lead, and I just really don't see that happening here. And if it does happen, he's going to have to go awfully fast early on to accomplish that. Now, the fact that, he won the Derby, we know 1.25 miles is probably within his grasp, but I just think, even that day, you certainly can make the case that Essential Quality was the better horse, and with the trip he had. So I just think he's up against it for a number of reasons here. So he won't be on any of my tickets. Because he wasn't on my tickets either in the Derby, so that shows you what I know.
Right, right. So, Mike, we were talking earlier about Latruska in the distaff, and just quickly, Gabby was telling us that there was a bit of an incident in her last work where she hooked up with another horse unintentionally. How much, now I'm assuming you, I don't know if you saw that, if you knew about it, you heard about it, you wrote about it.
No, I was here.
You were there. Okay. Tell us, first of all, what you saw and how much does that detract from, like, how much does that go, is that going to factor into your decision whether you're going to go for her or not this weekend?
Every horse is different, so it's hard to just in general say how something like that might affect them. But just from my viewpoint of it, it's not a good thing to have happen in your final prep for any race, let alone a race like this, when things just don't go 100% right. And especially when you're going to be the 4 to 5 favorite as well, from a better standpoint, you really don't want to see that. She was probably going to be out. I think the intention of the work was for an easy half mile in around 48. I think I heard the trainer say that. She wound up going at 47 and 3. I think I wound up having at the end of that. But, at the end of the work, she just seemed to be backing off a little bit, not finishing strong. The rider was probably part of that reason. I think he kind of got trapped in not knowing what to do to go on with it with the other horse or to take her back and slow her down. It was a tough situation for the rider, that's for sure. But the fact that a 2-year-old, pulled away from her at the end and did so significantly, and even more so on the gallop out, it's just not a great scenario from a visual standpoint and just from everything else. Going into a race where you're going to be 4 to 5. I mean, certainly she's the horse in here to beat without a doubt. But, after something like that happens, I mean, you also have to ask yourself too, I mean, how long can this run of hers last? I mean, she's been so consistent for so long. She's been so terrific. And I love Fausto Gutierrez. He's one of the most entertaining interviews, as far as from my point of view, from my job, that you could have. And he's a guy you could root for really easily in here. But, as a bettor, I think I'm going to look elsewhere just for a whole number of reasons between, can she carry that form, another race, and after what happened the other day, it's over a track that she's never been on before, although that doesn't seem to bother her. I'm probably going to pick against her, and if she beats me at 4 to 5, she beats me at 4 to 5.
Okay, that's good. It's fair enough. Mike, we didn't really talk about with Gabby earlier. We talked about the juvenile fillies, but we didn't really talk about the juvenile, the colts. And obviously, it seems like it's a pretty open division. Jack Christopher, he seems to be the talking horse. At least it seems early on, he's the one to beat. He was very impressive in his debut. He was at Saratoga, Belmont. I'm assuming maybe you saw him. I'm guessing you might have seen him work, or you would have seen him at Saratoga this summer. I don't know, but I'm just guessing. So tell us a little bit, can Jack Christopher be beaten?
Well, the first thing was I've seen a lot of him. I saw a lot of him this summer. I mean, he probably worked and made the best appearance of any 2-year-old that I saw there all summer. I mean, he's just an imposing looking horse. He's just tremendous looking. His works one was better than the next. There was no surprise when he was bet to even money and he won by 8 3/4 lengths the first time out. And really no surprise to me also that he won the Champagne. That being said, as far as 2-year-olds go, once you run numbers like he's run, once they have run numbers like he's run early earlier in their year, as we're getting later and later now, but even though the Champagne was in October, it was only his second start. He ran a 102 buyer. And if you look back in history with horses that have run big numbers, 2-year-olds that have run big numbers like that, coming into a race like the Juvenile in the Breeders' Cup, their success rate has been little, if none at all. They've all seemed to regress off that big race. Now, he's a bigger, imposing looking 2-year-old, so he might be able to withstand that. But again, you're talking about a horse that's going to be a short price, going at, you know, two turns for the first time, a distance he's never been. He drew the rail, which, you know, may or may not be an advantage. I'm not sure if he gets some pressure from outside, pace-wise, or gets to, you know, pinch back a little bit into the first turn. He'll have that going against him. So, you know, on paper, on looks, I saw him this morning, his first day out today, looked great, galloping over the track. You know, so on paper, he's the most logical winner. But from a betting standpoint, I probably have to, you know, maybe I have to play against him. Who, I'm not quite sure yet. I really haven't spent a lot of time looking at the race and looking at the competition. And again, if he wins, it would be no surprise. Obviously, he's the best horse in here. But we had Jackie's Warrior come into this race off similar form and numbers last year, and he did not deliver the goods at a short price. Now, as we seem to have learned since then, he's just not a two-turn distance horse, and he's going to be the favorite in the sprint on Saturday. So that just may be as simple as that. The distance got him. Whether the distance will get Jack Christopher, or whether it was the distance that got him, or he also regressed off those big early races, it's probably a combination of the both. Whether the distance will get Jack Christopher, maybe a little less likely. He looks like a horse that should handle it, but just from a betting standpoint, value standpoint, to me, these races are all about value. I'm not going to take 4 to 5.
Mike, you did mention Jackie's Warrior in the sprint. That's another race we didn't talk about earlier with Gabby. And I'm just wondering if you have an impression. I didn't see, again, I don't see I haven't seen I have I don't have the actual draw. I haven't seen that yet, but you said Jackie's Warrior, he's in there. How did he draw? How do you think he looks, and who do you think his main competition is going to be in the sprint?
He drew post position 2. It's a 9-horse field. We had Flagstaff came out yesterday. He was going to run, but they wound up deciding to retire him instead. You know, he's another one. He's the one to beat. It's interesting when you look through these races, the dirt races on Saturday. The favorite in all 5 of the dirt races are speed horses. So by the time we get to the Classic, we might have a little bit of an indication how the track is playing Saturday. If these horses, you know, don't run well, or if they all win, you could make the case that, well, the best horses won. If they don't win, though, you might make a case for the track was playing a little bit against them. On paper, too, Jackie's Warrior is strictly the one to beat, numbers-wise. I mean, everything he's done, his last race was probably his best yet. It's interesting, though. I was talking to Steve Asmussen this morning about Jackie's Warrior. You know, here he is in the sprint. In his 11-horse career, he's only run 6 furlongs twice, and one of them was in his last race in the Gallant Bob, which was pretty much a paid workout for him, considering the competition. He was supposed to win the race, but he did it fast. He did it with a big number, and he did it under wraps. He ran his career best buyer and could have gone faster if he needed to. Steve just said he's just so good, this horse, at shorter distances. Obviously, they tried 2 turns twice, and it didn't work out. He just seemed to be exuding confidence. He just said this horse it makes you feel good when you lead him over there, watch him in the paddock, and know he's your horse going over there for the race. So the one big question mark is the fact that this is his first time against older horses, and sometimes that can be significant, although we've seen 3-year-olds have success against older horses in this race. He's got Following C, who at the last minute, Todd Fletcher, they were wavering whether to run him or not. He is here. He is going to run. He drew the rail, which I'm sure if Todd knew he was going to draw the rail, he probably wouldn't have gone in there. But he's got a little bit of speed inside Jackie's Warrior, so that could be somewhat significant. Batera Sky, the Japanese horse in post 4, he chased the winner Matoli, Steve Asmussen's Matoli, at Santa Anita 2 years ago before finishing 8th in the sprint. So we know he's got some speed. Special Reserve is on the outside in post 8. He's got some speed. but I don't know if they have the speed of Jackie's Warrior. He's won from off the pace a little bit before Jackie's Warrior, but I think if Steve gets his druthers, he's on the lead and out of the gate and gone and won't look back. I'm probably going to pick him, even though I'm not crazy about the short price there. Dr. Schivel is in post 9, by the way. He obviously has a little bit of speed too, but they don't want him on the lead, even though he won the Santa Anita Sprint that way. I thought the horse coming in I liked for a price, and there was Aloha West. Probably should have beat Special Reserve into Phoenix. He got a wide trip and trouble at the start. He got beat in neck and was coming on strong at the end. He worked here the other day. I was hoping to see just a little bit more pop out of him in that work. Going to keep an eye on him as the week goes on. I still might make him my second pick in here. I haven't decided yet, but I think he's a horse that's getting better with every start. I just hope that last race was a pretty hard race for him. Maybe didn't gut him a little bit and is going to force him to regress here. So again, I'm going to keep an eye on him as the week goes on and see how he does.
Okay, Mike, what about the Dirt Mile? So there's another horse, obviously, Life is Good. You mentioned Todd Pletcher. Life is Good. He's been a very impressive horse. I believe he was with Bob Baffert early on. Then he was transferred to. He's run well for Todd, and he's going to be the favorite in that race. Is he a lock, or again, do we have to poke around for some value there?
He is a 3-year-old lightly raced going up against some real seasoned older horses in here. But I just get the impression that this is a freak. I mean, this horse. He never should have lost the Jerkins to Jackie's Warrior. I think he should have won that race. And, I've just said how good Jackie's Warrior is. And it was like 9 lengths back to Following Sea. He was a pretty darn good horse. Following Sea was third, was no match for either of those two that day. He came back and he beat a small and not very strong field in the Kelso going a mile in his second start off the layoff. But just the way he looked doing it and the way he's trained, his work the other day, I saw it on tape and my colleague Dave Grenning wrote about it. The gallop out in the work was sensational. He just kept going and going and going. And that's the way he's sort of been back at Saratoga too, training up to the Jerkins, which I'll repeat is the race he probably shouldn't have lost. He probably should have beat Jackie's Warrior, which is just saying something right there, obviously. So I think Life is Good is going to win. I think he's going to, again, another favorite, dirt main track favorite on Saturday, who's a speed horse. So if the track's playing the speed and he gets the lead, I think he's probably going to win in here. I'm not sure where else you'll look for somebody to beat him. Ginobili obviously is one horse that has a chance. Silver State, another coming off the second. He did get beat last time, but unfortunately, a bad break cost him the win at the Parks Dirt Mile over Mind Control, who unfortunately came up with a temperature today and cannot run. Mm-hmm. But those two are probably the main competition. But I think Life is Good will win.
Okay. If anybody wants to ask Mike a question before we let him go, if you guys have anything that you want to ask. Mike, I'm just going to ask you first of all, and again, knowing that you haven't seen all of these, as you said, there's 100-some horses, odd horses that have worked, so you couldn't have seen them all, and they've worked at other locations. So from what you've seen, you've actually seen quite a few of them over this past week or the past weekend. Who would you say really, if there was one horse that you could pick that stood out just from the work, doesn't matter what race, what surface, whatever, if there was one horse that you could say really stood out to you in their final work, who would you say that was?
Well, there were 2 horses here on Saturday that really caught my eye, and one of them is going to be a big price. And a couple of people have kind of laughed at me when they mentioned it on Twitter the other day, how good this horse worked. And I just suggested if you hadn't thought about considering this horse, you might want to consider him now. I didn't necessarily say I was picking him to win, mm-hmm. but just the way he worked, and that's Acclimate. Again, and there was the gallop out was just tremendous. He's going to be going a mile and 3/8, but he certainly stamina is not going to be his problem. Now, he is a speed horse. And the one thing that I could see in talking to locals who follow Del Mar a lot more than I do, speed on the turf is not an asset here. So that closers seem to have an advantage on this turf course. Could he get loose on the lead and at least hit the board at 20-1? I think it's possible. I just from a workout standpoint, he was very, very good. And I saw the same thing from McKinnon on Saturday. He worked prior to Hot Rod Charlie, had worked for Doug O'Neill. And I just love what I saw from McKinnon. And it was the same thing. I mean, his final time, I think they gave him 1:14.3 for 6 furlongs. He broke at the 5/8 pole, and he won his first eighth in 14-2. And he went to the wire in 1:02, which means he worked his last, half mile in 47-3. And sometimes, you can't see that when you see the final workout times, because you just don't know how, unless you buy our workout report, and I'm going to put in a cheap plug here for our workout report, where that kind of stuff is explained. You can't see that. So he actually went 47-3 to the wire, and then went out 1:14-3, which is basically a 1 minute flat 5/8. If you take that's very slow, almost non-existent first eighth out. And then he continued out. He galloped out just super. He won a full mile in 1:40-1. And was just full of energy. So I just think this bodes well for him. I think it suggests that he's coming into the race in peak form, and could be a horse worth taking a look at.
Okay, so acclimates in the turf, correct?
Right.
And McKinnon, what did he draw into?
Hold on.
I'm kind of skimming as we're going along.
It's slipped my mind. Oh, he's in the juvenile turf. So
juvenile turf. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Juvenile
okay.
turf, and that's another plus for this work. I mean, this is a turf horse doing this on the dirt. So, okay. I mean, it certainly indicates that he's coming into this race at the top of his form. Now, if you don't think like a little improved effort from him is still good enough to win the juvenile turf, what one thing that helped him was that Annapolis is out. I mean, Annapolis was going to be the horse to beat, and he's not in there now. So another horse I like in here too, and I didn't see his last work, but I spoke to my colleague, Stephen Skaggs, who's up at Saratoga, Oklahoma training track, and going to be filing reports for the form. And he liked the way this horse went through his final work up there before shipping down. And he's only run twice, but he's been awfully good, Dakota Gold. I think that's a horse you might also want to take a bit of a look at here if you haven't considered him before this. He's trained by Danny Gargan, and he's shown an awful lot in an awful short time so far. I thought his last race in Monmouth was very good for a number of reasons. He just finished strong, and he got an 85 buyer, and that was his turf debut. He got an 85 buyer, and talking to some of the buyer folk, I think the number maybe should have been a little higher. So, or could have been a little higher. It was a tough number to make that day, but I'm just saying, throwing him out there, Dakota Gold in the juvenile turf along with McKinnon.
Okay, good. So you do have turf picks for us, Mike.
Well, in a couple of the races, yeah. I haven't sat down and actually handicapped them, but I have seen horses here and there that have caught my eye enough where I know a lot of my handicapping and my plays are based strictly on workouts and how the horses look when they come in here and train. All the Europeans, or a lot of the Europeans, went out today for the first time, and sometimes after you get to see them for a few days, they went on the main track today. They'll go to the turf, I guess, starting tomorrow, and maybe for a few days. Some of them may even work. It's interesting to watch the Europeans as opposed to the U.S. horses. They have their last works 6, 7, 8 days before a race. I've seen Europeans come in here and work on Wednesday 5/8 to run on Friday. That doesn't bother them. And every once in a while, you see something significant in those works that lead you to change your picks. So that's why I like to wait as long as I can on handicapping the races and making my final picks. Unfortunately for the racing form, we have to have our Friday picks in on Tuesday and our Saturday picks in on Wednesday. But sometimes even those can change by something you see, the next day out here on the racetrack.
Okay, well, I'm sure we'll probably see a note. You write notes as well, don't you? Like following even after you send in your pics? If
Well,
you,
I do clocker. I do a clocker workout report every day in the form that's also online, and
Mhm.
I do a video too, talking about what happens here in the morning each day. So,
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
um, so those are the latest updates. And like I said, we do sell the clocker report at drf.com, and that will include workouts from all over the country. We have guys in New York, and like I said, we even have someone up at Saratoga. We had some people at Churchill, and we've had someone at Santa Anita, and now here for the last 3-4 weeks. So
Mhm.
it's pretty good. It's pretty good coverage. The European works, obviously, or whatever they do over there in the mornings, we know nothing about. But we, like I said, we will get to see some of them here before the race days on Friday and Saturday.
Okay, good. So we'll definitely watch the videos. Those are always really informative. And also, if to go onto the Daily Racing Forum, as Mike said, the Clockers report, I think it's invaluable, honestly, especially if you bet races. I think it's really something everybody should have. But that's just my personal opinion. And I'm not here to promote Daily Racing Forum, but
You're
I
not
just
getting
think
a cut. No, that's
yeah, okay. Okay. All right, Mike, thank you so much for joining us. Again, it's always like invaluable information that you give us here when you come on and join us. And we appreciate you taking the time to come and talk to us today.
my pleasure. Good luck, everybody.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.